6 years ago, Elon Musk was an internet entrepreneur who had really struck it big. He co-founded PayPal and sold the company for more than $1 billion. But then he thought, let me turn my eyes to the sky and to the heavens. And he has decided to start a startup rocket ship company. He's calling it SpaceX, and that's where we are right now, here with Elon Musk, who, in essence, you want to become the Walmart of rocket ships, cheaper, reusable.
That's one way to think of it. But certainly the overarching goal is to make space travel affordable such that we can ultimately extend life beyond Earth to other planets.
Yeah, other planets. And that's a long way away, I'm sure. But we are standing right now by the Falcon 9 rocket. Tell us about this rocket.
Sure. This is a very large vehicle. We're actually only looking at the first stage right now. And it's the full rocket is 180 feet long. And it's 17 feet in diameter at its widest point. And liftoff thrust is almost 1 million pounds, which is 4 times the maximum thrust of a 747. And propellant-wise, it uses a refined form of jet fuel for a fuel and liquid oxygen for the oxidizer.
How much does that cost?
It's actually, the fuel and oxygen is not that much. It's maybe a couple $100,000. So
nothing, cheap.
Well, cheap relative to the total cost of the vehicle, because the vehicle is around just under $40 million to produce.
That's what I want to put into perspective for the viewers. While that sounds like a lot, 40 million, let's walk along here and show this rocket a little bit. The big boys at Boeing and Lockheed Martin, they're charging more than 100 million per rocket for clients.
Yeah, the total cost of our nearest domestic competitors is about 4 times greater than us, that being Boeing and Lockheed.
Yet, let's talk about where you stand right now. You've had 3 tests of the Falcon 1. That's Falcon with 1 engine versus 9 engines here. The most recent one, early August 2nd, and it did fizzle out. What happened?
Well, we had a very good first stage flight. So the initial portion of flight was actually very good. But we had a problem during stage separation where the first stage and the first stage actually had an extended thrust transient causing it to recontact the second stage after stage separation. So the first phase of flight went really well, and it was using a new engine. In fact, the engine that will be used on the Falcon 9. And so on the plus side, we were able to prove that the engine worked very well. We were able to eliminate a potential failure mode on Falcon 9. And we were able to test many other aspects of flight. So it was helpful from a test standpoint. And I think feel pretty confident of getting to orbit on our next on Flight 405.
Is NASA confident? NASA has given, by the way, NASA has given SpaceX one of the first 2 private contracts to pull off such a feat, and that would be to ferry crew and cargo to the International Space Station.
Yes.
Did you hear from them? I mean, 3 failures. What are they saying?
Well, it's not really considered 3 failures when you're in the development phase of a vehicle. It's sort of like saying, well, if you've got beta software and it crashes 3 times, then, your software is lousy. But that's not the case, because when you're in the development phase, you expect things to crash. I mean, that's essentially what development's all about. And NASA recognizes this. And in the early days of rocketry, you had many failures in a row. In fact, even not so long ago, a vehicle like the Delta III, which was developed about 10, 15 years ago, had 3 failures, in the early going. So it's not really something that NASA's unfamiliar with. They know that when you've got all new technology and you're developing, something that's quite radical and new, you're going to see, there's going to be issues in the development.
Well, the Wright brothers had 199 failed wing launches, but is that a failure when the 200th worked out? I just want to let you know we've got workers whom we can't show right now because of your NASA deal where they say we can't specifically show certain things, but that's the banging and the noise that you're hearing right now. Let's talk about outsourcing. Now, the Air Force is going to be your first payload, I believe, on the Falcon 9. Is that correct?
Yeah, there will be, yes.
That's the government talking right there where you can't really elaborate, but... But can you do it? The clock is ticking, and you're eventually going to hopefully put astronauts in capsules, which we'll show in our next segment, but people say Elon Musk is nuts. He's an internet guy. What's he doing here? Your response?
Well, I'm a technologist and really a physicist more than anything else. That was my primary academic background. So when I got into the internet, people were saying, hey, what's this physics guy doing in the internet? So, I mean, you know, it's hard to, you just can't win. People expect that if you do one thing, you got to do that for the rest of your life. But actually, the internet was somewhat of a diversion from my primary interest, which is in physical objects. You know, I'm working on space as a problem because I think it's one of the most important problems that faces life itself. Yeah.
And I'd like to tell our viewers that your Merlin test, the test of the Merlin engines, I believe we have video of this, that actually went off pretty well in Texas recently.
Right. We had two big events, one of which went off really well. That was the full thrust firing of our Falcon 9 rocket, and that's really a sight to behold. And then the test launch of Falcon 1. The test launch of Falcon 1 was, I call it partially successful. The Falcon 9 launch was, Falcon 9 firing was very successful, and 100% on that front. So it was sort of a mixed week, but overall pretty good.
What's amazing, too, is that it takes, a crew of about 10,000 to get the space shuttle up. You've got 500 people working here. That would probably grow, but that's how you'll keep your sort of Southwest Airlines of the rocket industry, or whatever you want to call it, as a comparison, to keep the costs down?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, at the end of the day, everything is people cost. You know, if you take it back down far enough, I mean, it's people that mine the ore and refine the ore and make the metal, and then ultimately, it all sums up to people. So if we were to make the cost affordable, the number of people per launch has to be a much lower number than it has been in the past.
We will hear much more from Elon Musk coming up, and wait till we show you the human capsule that he is going to hopefully get astronauts in to shuttle to the space station. And does it surprise anybody that these are the signs that they have up in the building of all of the great explorers, Goddard, Sir Isaac Newton, as inspiration at this little startup company in Hawthorne, California, where they say, yes, we can take on Boeing and Lockheed Martin, and we will. Elon will be back with me in the next half hour or hour or so. So stay tuned. Much more ahead from Hawthorne, California. Cheryl.